I'm chair lady of the Friends of the Smuts House. So we belong to the Wildlife and Environment Society, and our role in life is to help Smuts Foundation. Thank you for attending this event. I would like to thank Claudius for offering this, to share his thoughts with us on this expectations of the Rainbow Nation. And also Jan du Toit, Huey for catering, and Sharon for her enthusiasm and organisation. This event is being run by the General Smuts Foundation. Mostly we are here running things by the Friends, so this is different. The programme is this. After this introduction, Claudius will do his talk. Then at about 6:45 we'll have supper, and after supper,
we face a daunting challenge as a human race. Just 2 weeks ago, Michelle and I were down in the Cape, and we visited Smuts' birthplace again. And two things struck me about it. The first one was that the young lady that normally guides people through his house, she said, when people come here, they want to be left alone. They don't want to go on a guided tour. They want to be left alone. And we said, where do they come from? And she said, all over the world. And that struck me, that there are people that come to his birthplace and they want to be alone in this space where he would work. And they come from outside of the world. We've forgotten that legacy in this country for all sorts of reasons. That struck me. People want to be alone in that space. And it seems to me that what they're looking for is to touch into the spirit of the place. We visited this house just last week again. And one of the ladies said some people have seen his ghost sitting in the chair during the lounge. I think that if we have those kinds of eyes, we can see things like that. You would have agreed with that. We want to touch into that spirit. The second thing that impressed me about being at his birthplace was the utter simplicity of that lifestyle. Who's been to his birthplace? No? Go there. The utter simplicity of that lifestyle. And what I love about it is that he didn't have formal schooling. His job was first to herd the chickens. That was his job. Then to herd the goats. That was like a promotion. And eventually, when the Khoisan herd, to look after the cattle in the fields. So for the first 10 years of his life, his schooling was Mother Nature herself. He learned to know the world around him with such an intimacy. He was homeschooled by his mother, smart lady. She could speak French, she could play the piano. But his first education was the world that has birthed us in the first place. There's something poignant about that. And when we fast forward from that birthday in 1870 to this day in 2018, what a different world. What an astonishingly transformed place. While we were here last week, one of the ladies said, I long for those days. But what we're going to be looking at is that evolution is irreversible. We can't go back, but we can redesign the future. So there's something poignant about the fact that we are sitting with a person that grew up in that utter simplicity, who was on a first name basis with Albert Einstein. He was one of the few people in the world that Einstein said actually understood the theory of relativity. One of the few, and yet he had come from such simple roots. And Lawrence van der Post says something interesting. Lawrence van der Post said he had a vision of Africa, he had a cosmic vision of Africa for a cosmogonic cause. Africa actually was holding an opportunity for humanity to rediscover itself. That was his vision. And so that's why the theme of the area that we want to begin exploring, what is the relationship of holism, that perspective, and Ubuntu, the African perspective. What is that relationship? How does that address that issue of the cosmogonic cause? Africa holds an opportunity for humanity. It's not an easy route. And when we then fast forward to 2018, Michelle and I have just come from a 2-day workshop just down the road here at the Irene Country Lodge, where we've been working with a very sophisticated company, with their management, looking at the stress of their lives, looking at the complexity of their lives, the pace of it, the challenges that people face on a daily basis just to get to the working place. We look at the context of South Africa. We look at the challenges of South Africa. We have to see those challenges against the context of the world. We can't isolate this anymore. We have to see it against the context of the world. I was at a conference in Norway last year called the Starmers Conference. I had this wonderful gift. One of the companies that I worked for, the CEO of that company, out of her own pocket, subsidized me to go to a week-long science conference, where we had the largest gathering ever of Nobel Prize-winning scientists. I'm very grateful for that opportunity. Stephen Hawkins was alive there. He gave the keynote address. And he gave a sobering message. He said, ultimately, we're going to have to leave this planet. It's too late. It's too late to reverse what is happening on the planet. And I wrote a couple of blogs where I said, there's got to be another option. There's got to be another option to the fact that, and the clever idea is that they're going to miniaturize us into a DNA code. Stay with me. And then they'll put us on the front of a laser beam. And they project us at the speed of light into another planet. These are options that the scientists are looking at. One of the astonishing presentations that was made was the DNA manipulation of our brain cells to change our memories. This is the kind of stuff they were looking at. The technology that is available to us at the moment is astonishing. Elon Musk has just sold his first ticket for a person to go to the moon. You would have seen it on the news. And yet, we don't seem to be able to solve our human problems. We don't seem to be able to nurture this biosphere that birthed us in the first place. That birthed Smuts so that he could actually grow up in that world and integrate it into his very being. So we're not just looking at a South African problem, we're looking at a global problem. And in its own way, South Africa, I believe, is a microcosm of the global issue. Issues such as the huge income disparity. It's a global issue. And it's hardly going to be resolved. Issues such as the interpenetration of cultures, the interpenetration of value systems, the conflict of religions. These issues of humanity having to come to grips with the fact that we share one planet. And we have to learn to live together on one planet. That's not just a South African problem, that's a global issue. And it seems as though South Africa has almost, through history, through the course of events, it's actually right on the forefront of needing to address the challenge, of needing to go to a new place. Once again, it was Albert Einstein who said, you cannot solve the problems from the level of thinking that generated those problems. We've got to go to another place. And we're going to be just looking at that very briefly. So I want to say this. We can be angry about the condition of the world. We can be angry about the condition of South Africa for so many reasons. But anger is not going to address any of the issues. We can hope that by bringing about restorative justice, we would have solved the problem. But one of the things that we need to come to grips with is the irreversibility of where life has brought us. We cannot go back, but we can begin to reshape and reimagine the future. One of our colleagues is a philosopher and a complexity theorist. And he is an interesting person. He's a professor at Colorado University, Boulder University, but at the moment he's working in China at Macau University. They've just been whacked by a typhoon, you would have seen on the news. And he says this, he says, all sorts of wonderful futures are scattered all around us, he says. But we've got to gather them together. The world of potential is there. The world of doing things differently is just the decisions that we're making on the moment. But we've got to gather those new visions together. And so it seems to me that between holism, and we're just touching to some of those principles, and Ubuntu, there can be a potent synthesis. It can provide a new framework for us to think about new futures. Let's just start with Ubuntu. I'm not an authority on that at all. But what it does have, it has a different view of what personhood means. It has a different view of saying, you are an individual and complete in your own right. It is saying that our personhood is embedded in society. Our personhood is embedded in our fellow human being. We are being shaped, and we are shaping society. And personhood is an emergence of the fact that we're embedded in community. Smuts absolutely understood that. He absolutely understood that relationality because he understood Einstein's relativity. That the real substance is not in the part. The real substance that is generating life is in the relationship of parts. That was what relativity was about. And he embraced it. He embraced the relativistic view and he embraced evolution. But he didn't embrace a mechanistic evolution. He embraced a purposeful evolution. And he called that holism. That evolution is integrating more and more substance into wholeness, into wholeness. And it was on its way to self-perfection. And so between his view of personhood, as expressed in holism, and in the Ubuntu principle, there has to be a meeting point of all peoples in South Africa that we can begin to use as a frame of reference to open a new conversation. But he believed that personhood was not only embedded in society. Personhood was embedded in the fullness of nature, in the fullness of the ground of being from which we emerged. And so these days, if you go to Schumacher College in Devon, where they actually offer a MSc degree in holistic science, one of the few places in the world that actually does that, they talk about being embedded in the world. The human being is embedded in the world, and so the human being should embody the world. Embeddedness, embodiment. Our relationality with each other also reflects the fact that we are constituted by the substance of the world and its full evolution. And he believed that the function of evolution was to make the potentials of the universe become manifest. And so he believed that there was a force, a driving element in the universe that was constantly striving to find its way to greater and greater perfection by the integration of the disparate parts. It was put very poignantly for us by one of the professors when Michelle and I attended a workshop at Schumacher College. And he took us to the sea down on the coast of Devon. And he said, in that ocean at one point there was a massive mitochondria, little unicellular microorganisms, and they function independently, the mitochondria. But now that very mitochondria lives within our cells, and we would not be able to convert energy from the food that we eat, and we'll do that in about an hour's time, into ourselves if the mitochondria wasn't in our cells. Can you get the metaphor of what they're suggesting there? We are made of this disparate stuff that at one point was independent organisms. It's come together to create the you and to create the I. But we've reached a point in this evolutionary process where the next level of coming together, i.e. humanity, is struggling. And I want to suggest that Holism actually offers the framework in which we can begin to explore what is it that will enable us to come together. What is it that will make the approach of Ubuntu a functional, a working approach? One of the great gifts that has happened subsequent to Smuts' amazing address, 1931, where he was inaugurated as the president of the British Association for the Advancement of Science. Westminster Hall in London. 5,000 scientists gathered to hear his keynote speech. And one of the great gifts that emerged from that amazing speech, and I appeal to you to read it, the amazing vision that he had already in 1931, is out of that emerged systems theory. And I don't know if there are people here that have worked with systems theory. Out of systems theory has emerged complexity theory, the theory of complex adaptive systems. And as this emergence of knowledge is taking place, more and more there is a meeting point being reached between emerging science, particularly with complexity theory, and the holistic philosophy, which meets with a new perspective of a reanimated world. Let me just talk to that briefly. When the Western world became secular, when we tossed out our religious traditions in favor of what could be proven as scientific, truth was now discerned by the scientific model, and the rest was tossed out. For that we can thank René Descartes with his Cartesian dichotomy. The res extensa, the measurable world, that's real stuff. The res cogitans, the world of thoughts and emotions and beliefs, that's kind of philosophical stuff, but it's not the real world. We became sundered, us Westerners. So we go to church on Sunday, and then there's the real world, Monday and the rest of it. We were in Italy not long ago, and we spoke to some Italians. They said, what is it like to be a Catholic in Italy? The man said, it's really easy. He says, you live your life in the week and you confess on Sunday. A Sunday world. And so we crunched the world down, we crunched reality down to that which is material, that which is fixed, that which is hard substance. And hence the topic of my thesis that Marion was mentioning, that we need a new epistemology of healing. It's not just about cells and physical bodies and bones and stuff. It's about spirit. It's about soul. It's about the mind. It's about aspirations. It's about values. And so we tossed out the meaning-making frame. We tossed out the vision of humanity, who humanity could become, other than how it could be scientifically manipulated. And we tried to solve human problems from that kind of mechanistic perspective. And Smuts warned against that. He said, if we are going to be locked into this materialistic paradigm, he says we're missing the vitalizing factor of life, which is fields, which is energetic fields, which is spirit. In fact, he even went so far as to say, by trying to look in the DNA to find the cause and to find the sources of what informs us, he said, we're missing the point. It's the fields that are informing the DNA. He knew that world. And so he saw the world as alive and animated. And so we've reached a perspective now, we've reached a point where the animistic view of traditional societies, it doesn't matter where they are, North America, Australia, here in Africa, of traditional societies that see the world alive, that see trees alive, that see rocks alive. That's what's once believed. In the holistic perspective, there's a place that we can actually see a new, alive, animate world. In fact, the same person that introduced us to the mitochondria, a scientist, a botanist, he just published a wonderful book called An Animate World. Like, hello, we've discovered something amazing. Guess what? It's always been known. We just tossed it out for a materialistic paradigm. And so the philosophy of, or the science of complexity, the science of complexity says that all elements in the universe are adaptive. Every element, when it comes into a relationship with another element, is going to be reforming itself in that relationship. They call it complex adaptive systems. So you and I are complex adaptive systems. An organization is a complex adaptive system, constantly reshaping itself to its conditions. Epigenetics is now understanding that about how the gene works. Our genes are actually being informed and modified by the environment in which we function. That's now. So we've reached that place where the science is actually pointing where we need to go and where we need to shift our thinking, where we need to shift our consciousness. So I want to briefly just show you a little model, and I hope you can see it. If we see the real action of the universe, so I'm not calling the real substance of the universe, but the real action of the universe. Smuts said, there's no more things. We're now looking at the reality of existence as action. Einstein called that the curvatures in space-time. Goodness knows what that means. But the real action of the universe, we perceive that through our senses. And we are going to be creating, we're going to be mapping to that. We're going to have a way which we neurologically are creating images and internal representation of this real action of the universe. That real action of the universe is, however, going to be filtered, is going to be transformed by our beliefs, by our values. What we focus on, our values. What is important to us, our values, is going to be allowed through, and the rest is going to be deleted. Just this afternoon, we had a group of people, and we sat on the lawn, on bean bags, there at the Irene Country Lodge, and we got folks just to see the world. We got folks just to look at a scene and open their perceptual filters. And they were astonished after we went through this exercise of presence. How they said, that tree was there all the time, but I'd never seen it. I opened my eyes and I thought, where did that come from? Did somebody just put that there? They hadn't seen it. We got them to listen. We got them to hear sounds that they didn't even know existed. We got them to smell the air. We got them to taste the air. We got them to be present. To try and bypass these perceptual filters. Because those perceptual filters, deletion, we're deciding what we pay attention to and what not. Distortion, we change the information to our prejudices, and then generalizations. Ah, I got that, that's the name of that. That is actually shaping the way that we internally represent our world. And it is so locked into our language. And if we use materialistic language, we've got materialistic maps, and we freeze things. And the holistic model is asking us to become present. And in order to become present, it's asking us not to code to history and then project our anticipation of the future according to history, which is the natural thing to do. Do I know where this country is going? It's obvious, must be obvious, because that's history. It's asking us to code to this dynamic, present, fluid, malleable, totally creative moment right now of us being together. It's asking for the holistic view. And I believe that if we can start to get into what's here right now, who is here with me right now, beyond my assumptions, beyond my prejudice, then this map, rather than being a fixed view of the world, becomes a dynamic, moving relationship with the dynamic, moving world. It becomes a dance. My consciousness becomes a dance with life. And when that consciousness becomes a dance with life, 5 key enablers, I believe, come into play. Firstly, developing a quality of presence. Secondly, from that quality of presence, developing a capacity to agility. A capacity to notice and adapt, to move in time. The more present we are, the more agile we are, the more flexible we are, the more we can dance with this dynamic action of the universe. And the more agile we are, the more we can stay engaged with each other. The more we can relate to each other, the more we can get to a deeper knowing of who's with us.